Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of the auction now. We're going to discuss RCB. Historically, they've struggled quite a bit to form that team, a team that's never won the IPL. But last year, you saw signs of improvement. They have a lot of money to spend in this auction, and we can expect a lot of action from them on the auction table. So, to come to you first, Nakul, RCB have released Chris Morris, which is a big surprise for me. Why have they released him, and what is RCB's problem been historically?
We don't have enough time to work out what our season problems have been historically. From a purely cricketing point of view, because there was obviously something wrong with the cricketing culture there. It was the place where genius went to die for a few years. You got great players going in there and not doing very much, and then leaving and flourishing elsewhere. But they have been far too reliant on Virat Kohli and AB de Villiers for the runs, and they have lacked bowling depth. These are not new problems. This has been the case for a number of years. So RCB, again, the things they're looking for are an opener, a reliable opener. It was meant to be Aaron Finch last year. It didn't work out. And they're probably looking for a really reliable death bowler. I think they're reasonably well covered in the spin department with Chahel and Adam Zampa. And it would be putting a lot on Particle and Josh Philippi to expect them to be a reliable opening pair, particularly as Philippi takes up one of the overseas slots. So, I mean, again, really, it's the opener, and it's the sort of top and tail of the innings, as it were, or the top and tail of the order. With an all rounder as well, although I think they're probably going away slightly from the really all rounder heavy strategy that they've tried to employ in the last few years.
Yeah, with RCB, I think some of the times they've been too attacking in the top order. Do you reckon someone like a Manus Labuschagne or Steve Smith, because they have the purse to outbid most teams, they could go all out for someone like Steve Smith, who could also help Virat Kohli captain the side?
I'm not sure I agree with that analysis. I think the issue really last year in particular was that because there was no backup really beyond Kohli and de Villiers, they were having to bat far more conservatively than they should, Kohli in particular. And so actually having an option, having someone who can take the pressure off them means that they are more freed up and that they can be more aggressive. I don't think the issue was that they were too attacking at all last year, and I don't think that going for an anchor type like Labuschagne or Smith, who would be very expensive and who is a big name but is not really a world-class T20 player and has never really proven himself to be. You know, he's not one of these guys like Williamson and Root who's been able to adapt his game in the same way. I think that would be a mistake. I mean, one of the guys I could see RCB going big for with that money, with that pool, is Glenn Maxwell.
Do you agree with that, Greg?
Yeah, I could see them going for him, but I think it would be difficult to get him in there. As you've already mentioned, Chahal, Zampa and Washington Sundar is going to play as your kind of spinning all-rounder option. So I think I'm a big fan of Maxwell, and I think he's a very explosive player and would provide you maybe 2-3 overs of spin as well. But I would rather see them spend their money elsewhere on someone that's proven at the top of the order. I think maybe someone like a Jason Roy perhaps up there might be an option, or they could even be, I would imagine they'll definitely be in the Dawid Malan race to get him as well, for someone to take the pressure off Kohli and de Villiers, because as you've said, the pressure last year was on them, which forced them to bat more conservatively. And at times when they did collapse, as if Kohli and AB didn't get any, the rest of them struggled. But I think Padikal will be better this year. He obviously had quite a breakout season this year, but I think he will go from strength to strength. But I think the big issue for them is to find someone at the top to balance out with Kohli and AB and find that extra run getter that can take the pressure off those two great guys in the middle.
Abhimanyu, what do you reckon?
I think rather than these picks, they could go for a cheaper option in Avi Barot or Shah Rukh Khan. They were damn good in the Syed Mustaq Ali Trophy. Avi Barot even offers a backup wicket-keeping role if they need, and he had a strike rate of around 185 in the domestic tournament. And and Shah Rukh Khan is the kind of player that will suit RCB, because coming lower down the order, he could finish the inning strongly, which RCB was lacking. At times in the 11th to 16th over is when they were facing a lot of issues where their run rate was going very low compared to the rest of the innings, and that's where he can come in handy.
Do you agree with that assessment, Nakul, in terms of the lower middle order?
I think those actually are pretty decent options. I mean, it would certainly the holy grail for RCB would be a good Indian opener. Obviously, there aren't very many of those around who aren't already taken. But one of these emerging guys would be a useful option. It is something RCB have not historically done very well at in terms of bringing through developing talent. Although Pradekar last year did very well for them, so hopefully that the setup is more suitable to them. I know he's an off-spinning all-rounder again, but someone who could be a useful option is someone like Fabian Allen, who is a huge sort of triple threat with his batting and his bowling and his fielding. Was definitely a very talented player, but at the wrong franchise in the Sunrisers. So that could be an option. And because he hasn't actually played that much IPL cricket, or in fact much cricket at all recently, he could be a little bit cheaper than some of the other options. And would then leave them some leeway to also strengthen the fast bowling, which still needs some work. As much as Mohammad Siraj has emerged as a test bowler, it's still true that he's very hittable at T20 level, and that it's an attack that doesn't really convince.
Yeah, a couple of international fast bowlers that are available in the auction are Billy Stanlake and Sheldon Cottrell. Now, Billy Stanlake had a good IPL season a couple years ago with Sunrisers, and obviously didn't play much last year. Actually, didn't play at all, I think. But is he someone that RCB could single out and think maybe he could solve their problems and be that replacement for Dale Steyn that they've been looking for?
Stanlake didn't have a great BBL. He has fallen away a little bit, Billy Stanlake. A guy I'm a big fan of, and he's got this slightly unusual sort of bowling action where he sort of looks like he's hovering to the crease rather than running through it, and he's very tall, and he gets these bounces from a length and these good Yorkers. But I don't think he's had a particularly. I think he's one of those guys who, if you are picking him, you're picking him on reputation and sort of excitement rather than any kind of serious past performance.
Cottrell would be a good option. He's obviously bowled really nicely at the beginning for Kings 11, where even when they went on that 7-game losing streak, I thought he was probably their best player, and was kind of the victim of their success of the rejig that saw Gale come back in and obviously almost got them across into the playoffs. But I think Cottrell could be an option for RCB, would provide some pace up front and then some good death bowling towards the end as well, which would fill the void that RCB have had for years.
Now, another thing RCB have done though is they've traded in Daniel Sams and Harshal Patel from Delhi Capitals. So is Daniel Sams someone that solves that issue for them, or do you reckon they should still be going for another pacer in the auction?
Daniel Sams is at his best in the power play and in the early part of the innings. I mean, he did show for the Thunder for this season in particular some really good stuff with the bat. I mean, he won them a couple of games lower down the order, but he isn't. But he's a useful option for them. I mean, in terms of a death bowler, there aren't too many of those really quality death bowlers around. I mean, I would have said Tom Curran up until last year, but he didn't have a very good season. Hasn't done very well for England. I mean, I suppose actually one guy that we haven't really talked about at all for any of the franchises that we've covered is Alex Hales, who must be a very attractive option for somebody at the top of the order.
Yeah, Abhimanyu, do you think Alex Hales is someone that can solve that problem at the top of the order?
Definitely for RCB, because he was the highest run scorer in the BBL, and he is someone who has the knack of starting the innings very explosively, and that's what they need, because they don't have experience up top. Someone like Alex Hales could bring a lot of experience and could help Devdutt Padikkal even improve. So I feel, Alex Hales could be a good pick.
Yeah, Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I think like Abhimanyu says, he's got a lot of power at the top, and a lot of his experience, has played a lot of cricket around the world with his emissions from the England side, has meant that he's played a lot of franchise cricket and I think he could be a really good option for someone to have supporting the younger players like Padikal coming through and playing in the first team.
He's also kind of Galactico signing that RCB quite like to make, except this one makes some cricketing sense too.
So just a lot on that note with RCB, is it a surprise, Nakul, that they've let Chris Morris go?
I do wonder if there's some kind of plan to try and buy him back cheaper, the sort of the Unadcut model with the Rajasthan have been going for. Because, I mean, Chris Morris was a good signing for them in theory, although he didn't play as much last year. But 8 crore is a lot for a guy his age, particularly given that would be a significant chunk of the pot. But I do wonder if there might be some long-term strategy there to buy him back cheaper. I certainly think that they'll be keeping an eye on him and sort of have let's say if it goes above 5 crore, they drop out of the bidding. But if there's not so much interest, then they buy him back cheaper. You can certainly get 1, maybe 2 more years out of a guy like that.
I think this auction, it's all about the 1-year deals, if I'm correct. I think so that might be something that attracts RCB to go in for him again, maybe at a cheaper value. And another player who's retired actually for RCB is Parthiv Patel, who obviously didn't play as much as he would usually. But in the past couple of years, he has been a good player for RCB. He's obviously didn't play much last season. But is he someone they'd be looking to replace in that auction as well? Abhimanyu?
Yes, definitely. That's the reason I said Avi Barot, because he is that kind of a player who's there up top and is a wicket-keeping option also. Because Parthiv Patel was the only experienced opener that I had seen, that consistent opener, because Virat Kohli used to sometimes drop down to 1 down and Gale left. After that, still there was Parthiv Patel. But even after Parthiv Patel has left, I feel Avi Barot could replace him and probably fill his void.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make that, Abhimanyu. I'd be interested to see what you guys think where Kohli bats.
It should be 3. I don't really see the point in moving him up the order. I think you lose a lot there, and I think I'm not a fan of teams compromising a strength to hide a weakness, and I think that's exactly what that tick would be if Virat Kohli goes up to open. You're not actually solving a problem; you're just shuffling it around.
But I think I read somewhere that Virat Kohli said he preferred opening in T20s.
Everyone prefers opening in T20 cricket. It's the best place to bat. You get more time to play yourself in. You see this in international cricket a lot, where you get a lot of players who've opened or batted in the top 3 for their domestic teams, coming in and then having to bat lower down the order because everyone else also wants to bat in the top of the order, and it sort of goes on seniority. It's like some international teams are run like club sides or bad club sides, where it's almost like the senior guys get the best gigs. So I'm sure of course he wants to bat at the top of the order, but he's also not a fool, and he knows that it's in their best interest to get someone in who is a specialist opener and let him do what he's best at.
So interesting you mentioned that, because obviously RCB historically have been a side that have not done well because of their poor man management or their poor management skills. Rather, Kohli's captaincy has been questioned. I remember end of last season, Gautam Gambhir raised questions about the captaincy of Virat Kohli, saying that no captain goes 8 years without winning the IPL and still manages to captain a side. So do you guys reckon the pressure will be on him this season to pick the right side and also to do well? Otherwise, his captaincy could come under scrutiny, or is that too big a move for RCB to make? Yeah, Greg.
I would say a too big a move. You can go on.
No, I think the pressure is always on Virat Kohli. I think that comes with the role of captain of India and obviously one of the best players in the world. But it's a fair point. I think when you look at the facts, it has been 8 years that he's been captain, and there's no IPL trophy in the cabinet. But I'd be very, very surprised if they move on from him this year or next year or even in the next 3 or 4 years, because I think he's commands such a presence and is so important to that franchise that he's there for life, really.
I would agree with that. He's as there as long as he wants to be, really. And in terms of pressure, I mean, I don't think anybody puts more pressure on Virat Kohli than Virat Kohli does. he sets himself and his team such high standards. And I think it's been an issue sometimes for RCB in the way that has been communicated to a team that probably wasn't very well constructed and that probably has slightly unrealistic expectations of what it could be. Matching that sort of golden period where they had Dilshan and Gale and AB and Kohli all in the same team and a fully fit Dale Steyn and briefly Mitchell Starc, where they kind of had all of those, I'm going to use the phrase again, Galacticos firing all at once, but that didn't last very long and it's pretty hard to replicate. So the way he's had to captain will probably change, and he'll be aware of that. But I don't think you can heap any more pressure on Virat Kohli than he does on himself.
That's fair point from all three of you. And also, last thing I want to ask is then, in this auction, are RCB going to be looking at, instead of, because they have that massive purse of 35.9 million, crores, 35.9 million, 35.9 crores, will they be looking to get in 2 or 3 players that could take them from finishing third in 2020 to win that championship finally in 2021? Nako, you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be busy for sure. I mean, they've released a lot of players and the retained list.
Umesh Yadav, Dale Steyn, Moin Ali, Parthiv Patel, Pavan Negi, Isuru Udana, Gurkirat Man, and Chris Morris and Shivam Dubey.
Yeah, it's a lot of players to let go in one go, particularly given that as we've talked about it, the mega auction's coming up next year, and there's sort of a lot of one-term deals. There's a lot of holes they need to fill, and they've got a lot of money to do it. And it's been very much the RCB way to go after a couple of big names to kind of hang the franchise on. So yes, I expect them to be busy. I do think a lot of teams will be looking to exploit the fact that they have a lot of money, and so RCB could find themselves paying over the odds for a few players, which is something they're going to have to be cautious at, particularly if they go in big for somebody at the start of the auction. All of these little factors are going to have to be weighed up pretty carefully. So RCB, I think, more than most, have to be very clear about what they want.
Yeah, so just to throw a name out there, I want your opinion on this, Nako. What about someone like Shakib, who could reduce the pressure on Virat Kohli and AB de Villiers to have to finish the innings? They could bat freely towards that middle phase, knowing that there is a Shakib behind them who can clear the boundary at will, especially at a small ground like in Bangalore.
Shakib's a wonderful player, but he's not a hitter. And I think, as Greg talked about earlier, there's already a lot of spinning all-rounders in that RCB lineup. If Shakib was a left-arm seamer, then yes, then you go for him in a heartbeat for RCB. But as it is, I think he would be a slight upgrade on what they've already got, and probably not somebody who would be a good use of those resources that they do have.
Yeah, so just before we finish, like we do always, one player you had to buy, who would you go for? Greg, I'll start with you.
Ooh, I think, well, we've obviously discussed the need top order power and someone to bowl at the death. So if I can take 2, I'll take 2. I'll take Jason Roy or maybe Alex Hales. Actually, is a fairly good point. So I'll take Hales at the top, and then maybe a Jai Richardson, or maybe buy Chris Morris back for a bit cheaper and get him back at the death for a 1-year contract. Why not?
Yeah, what about you, Abhimanyu?
I would say Chris Morris again, and I would say maybe Malan. Maybe Malan, who could add up top, could add some value. So maybe Malan and Chris Morris.
And Nako?
Yeah, buy Boris. Jesus Christ, don't buy Boris. Buy Morris back cheaper and do what you have to do to secure Alex Hales.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining me. We'll see how the auction works out for RCB. They seem like they will be very busy in this auction, so we just got to wait and find out who they earmark and end up signing.